I think it's important to highlight, quite often it's not the fault of the person themselves. Quite often sponsors are not bad people, but good people can be bad sponsors. And the first sort of hurdle is in assigning a sponsor to a project in the first place. And I choose my words carefully, because actually the problem is very often when you assign someone rather than when they are self-selecting. So if we take this idea that the sponsor is the customer, they're the person who wants the thing that comes out of the end, it ought to be a statement of perfect logic that they are therefore the person coming to you and saying, I want this done, that they have skin in the game, that they're engaged. They ought to be, as I say, self-selecting. But what sometimes happens within, particularly within large organizations, is that someone will want the project done, but they're not perhaps senior enough or not perhaps engaged enough. And so they'll pick someone who's perhaps sponsored before, or perhaps has seniority within the organization to be sponsor. And that's seen as enough to qualify them for the role. But they might have no interest in actually the outcome of that project. So selection of the sponsor in the first place is quite important. And that's more of a broader organizational challenge in making sure you've got, one, sponsors who understand what that role is, but two, that they're actually invested in the outcome and they're not just assigned to a project because they've sponsored another project somewhere else. So that's sort of the first one, is the person allocated to the role of sponsor. And there's something I touched momentarily there on seniority, and there's something about that. The best sponsor isn't necessarily the most senior person in an organization, and quite a few organizations will go, well, this project needs sponsoring, therefore we need to pick the head of that function to do it. Well, the head of that function might have 101 other things on and not be too bothered about this project. But there might be someone slightly further down the hierarchy who actually is quite interested in this and has enough authority to help and do all the things that a sponsor should do. And actually possibly be far more engaged and invested in the outcome. So thinking about the level of seniority of the sponsor and understanding that it's not necessarily the most senior person in the organization, but perhaps what you want is the least senior person who still has enough authority to do the things to make the wheels turn, grease the wheels, and keep things moving and help the project deliver.